On nearly 200 consumer products and food samples in Ghana has revealed very worrying levels of lead contamination to the popular metallic cookware known as Dades3n. The study conducted by the environmental NGO Pure Earth's Blacksmith Initiative actually revealed disturbing levels of lead in very common consumer products. We'll shortly hear from the country director for Pure Earth, who's Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa. But first, though, here are details of some of the findings out of that research that was conducted, excerpts of which you have on your screens now, pointing to the levels of lead contamination. We start off with 10% of 193 samples which were conducted, actually containing some levels of lead contamination above the thresholds that were being dealt with. And then there's also the issue about, the metallic pot leading the other cookwares that you have. So you find the ceramic footwear and toys as well as cosmetics following through in terms of the levels of contamination out of that range of 4 products that you see there. And the metallic pot leading with, a staggering 55% in terms of the contamination rate. So what could be done to check this, and what's the way forward as the Pure Earth group is recommending? Joining us now as country director for the group, Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa, who's joining us now with more. Thank you, sir, for spending some time with us. Now it's 55%. Who knows? Maybe the figures could surge in the coming years. But what recommendation are you making to check that?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to throw more light on the findings of the Pure Earth Rapid Market Screening project. As you have indicated, the study reveals a very worrying trend of lead concentration in some consumable products, especially the locally manufactured Dades3n. I think one thing I need to clarify is that we're not putting this study in the public domain to put fear into people. But what we're seeking to do is to collectively find a solution to this canker of lead pollution and lead poisoning, so that together we can address it. And so, as you might be aware, this research was done in 25 countries, and over 5,000 consumer products were sampled. Here in Ghana, 195 consumer products were sampled in 4 regions: the Greater Accra, Eastern region, Takoradi, the Western region, and the Ashanti region. Our recommendations are simple. I think a lot of work to be done. We're calling on the government and agencies to intensify black lead level screening across the country to ascertain the actual levels of lead poisoning in the population. 2, we are asking for intensified home-based source assessment. Now we know, as a result of the study, that some of these metallic cookwares have lead poisoning above lead contamination or concentration above the reference level. We're talking about 55% here. And Bless, one thing I need to state is that our investigators or our scientists went further to conduct a leachate test. Now, the leachate test actually reveal the amount of lead that can actually leach into the food. Now, 52% of the pots tested leached in concentration greater than the reference levels of 10 microgram per deciliter. That's worrying. 52% of the pots tested leached in concentrations greater than the reference levels of 10 microgram per deciliter. Now, that's worrying. Some will ask, what procedure did you use to arrive at this? The procedure was simple. The pots were filled with water containing acetic acid, which is popularly called vinegar, and boiled for 2 hours to simulate cooking. Then the water was analyzed in the laboratory for lead contamination. Now, that was done 6 different times, and then the results were very clear that the lead concentration in this aluminum pot or this metallic cookware does actually leach into the water.
Okay, there's someone.
So that means that
I guess there's someone watching us now saying you're just throwing figures around. I mean, what's the effect on my stomach? Because I eat every day. I of course use the same cookware. What's the big deal after all?
Yeah, so the big deal, based on our finding, is that 20% of the pot tested in theory will result in appreciable blood lead level increase in children.
Wow.
We're talking about blood levels as more than 3.5 microgram per deciliter if food is consumed from them on daily basis. But the good news is that we are engaging the regulatory authorities. We met EPA yesterday to discuss the finding. Today we met with Ghana Standard Authority. I think what we need to do is to strengthen regulation. I think they need to be established framework that actually regulate the activities of these metallic cookware manufacturers.
Okay, I tend to see the danger here, but then how about technology and new ways of cooking? I guess that's another remedial point we could be looking at, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the new ways. Now, what I wanted to also put out there is that it's not all metallic cookware that are, let me say, have a lot of lead concentration levels. We're talking about some levels that are quite good. We're talking about the steel cooking pot, for example, are quite good, but they are very expensive. Now, what we've realized in our study is that the most concentrated lead findings are in these cottage manufacturing companies where they just manufacture these cookwares from these aluminum scraps. That is concerning. What we're telling the public is that be careful where you buy your metallic cookware from. I mean, if you buy it from a very cheap area at a very cheaper cost, the risk is that this metallic cookware may have lead concentration that may be inimical to your health and your children's health. So the good thing is that make sure you get a proper metallic cookware, and you are sure that you probably are not at risk of lead leaching into your food.
I guess this is why we need regulation, as you're pointing to, because technical issues here. For the average Ghanaian to just see on the streets or off the shelf that this is a highly concentrated cookware for me. The inability of the citizen to check is where we're limited now. So don't you think so?
I perfectly agree. I think aside this study, we've done another study which also reveals alarming blood lead levels in children under 5 years. And one thing I can assure you, with our engagement with stakeholders, Ghana Health Service, EPA, and today met with Ghana Standard authorities, that they are determined to be able to put in regulations and framework to curb the alarming rate of this lead pollution and poisoning in the country. It's a global issue, and a lot of people don't know much about this. It's just a new phenomenon, and people are very much concerned. How do we do? We have lead in gasoline. It was just phased off in Ghana in 2004. Now, the focus is on some of these metallic foodware that have probably lead in a concentration in them. And I think we are shining light on this so that together we can support the government and the stakeholders to ensure that the proper frameworks and regulations are in place to address this situation once and for all. So it's not fear and panic at all, but just awareness creation and also looking for ways and means.
Okay, I get the point. Which cookware do you use, by the way? Just being curious.
That's a big question. I think we all eat and eat from this.
All right then. P.S. we're having some challenge with, of course, the country director for Pure Earth, Esmond Wisdom, who was joining us there on Zoom. Quite an interesting finding there in the report.